You've got mail.
Welcome to Firewinds and Suns. This is an animated podcast video comic book of a role-playing game. Here in episode 2, we have the backstory of Alucard and a little history. And backstory can sometimes be the not most exciting thing, and that's why I lumped it all into this episode. If you want to listen to it, if you enjoy the show, if you want to know what's going on in the world-building experience and some history about Alucard, which I recommend, watch this. But it's not going to have any of the rolling of the dice in it. It's not going to have the action that episode 1 has in it, but we'll get back to that in episode 3. If you become bored with this, go ahead and just hit that next button and watch episode 3. You're not going to miss too much. So, there's some people who are really, really into something. They want to know everything about it. This is the episode for you. I apologize if the artwork moves too fast for you to read any comments on there. You don't necessarily have to read everything I write. It's not going to make too much of a difference to the storyline. But if you do want to see what's written, then just hit the spacebar and pause it. That's the beauty of the internet. This is January. I started this in June. It's not like I worked on it full time. It's just a hobby in a spare time. And somebody said that you should do art for yourself and not for everybody else. You should just do it so you like it. And that's what I'm doing. But at the same time, I like to make other people happy. Mainly, I'm doing this to share my love of creativity, of role-playing games in general, and making friends. That's probably like the biggest thing that I want out of this, is just to have somebody go, hey, I thought your game was cool. I want to play with you sometime, and maybe you play with me at a convention. Who knows? That's what life's all about. It's like the simple best things in life are free, like making friends. And one of my friends is in this part. This is Cheri, and his story of his old character, Alucard, became kind of a supervillain when he died. So I took over, and instead of destroying the character, he has to make a new character, and it tells a little bit about his new character. I love Cheri. He's absolutely hilarious sometimes. He plays almost the same character every time. He's a little psychotic, but he's really a great guy if you get to know him. So I hope you enjoy this part. It makes me laugh every time I listen to it. He's so fun to play with, and hopefully you enjoy this part about it too.
How do you own the castle and you're in your own dungeon? Did you just lock yourself in?
Okay, there's a story behind that. So
Are you in a panic room?
No, I'm not in a damn panic room. What am I, a chicken?
So you want the
No.
whole backstory? You want to tell, Cheri?
Go for it.
All right, so once upon a time, Cheri had a character named Alucard who did all sorts of horrible shit, and was eventually finally tamed by the law enforcement. Was arrested after being the shit blown out of him. He was handcuffed to a hospital bed. They undid the handcuffs to kind of help him to change his bedpan and stuff, but there wasn't much to him left. He was blind, his face was blown off, couldn't talk, and meanwhile there was a terrible accident. An Alliance police officer was also in the infirmary as well, in nearly the same condition, just basically a hunk of meat, but still alive. And he was selected for a special project to be turned into a RoboCop police officer type thing. But through some very unfortunate events,
They were very fortunate. Yes, they were.
and the orderlies changing the bedpans and other stuff, misplaced the tags, put them back on incorrectly. They rebuilt Alucard as a robot instead, and they put what was left of the police officer, sentenced him to death and fried him. So then he proceeded to break out of this top secret Alliance facility where they were working on him. Eventually, because of his cybernetic robot stuff, he basically evolved into a program. He occasionally surfaces in anything from a jukebox to a automated taxi to anything else, and has terrorized. There's also a very unfortunate series of events. Fish problems?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he basically caused chaos and like spread some virus. There's like this.
It was a carp virus.
There's a carp, yeah. This canned carp, and it was basically this bad canned carp. Basically, it was contained an escaped bioweapon in it that's turning people into viruses, and somebody basically stole a cargo full of it. And somebody changed the digital labels on it. Somewhere along the way, he became a new body. He somehow impregnated a prostitute at some point in time, had a daughter. The daughter ended up in an orphanage, and some dipshit wanted to adopt the worst child from the orphanage, which was a psychotic girl. What's her name? You don't even remember your daughter's own name?
Sure, I thought it was Cheri or something like that.
Cheri, yes. Cheri is her name.
When I played Alucard, I'll give you the prime example of my crowning achievement. One time I got pissed off at an orphanage, I boarded the place up, locked everybody inside, and burnt it down for freaking amusement. No other purpose.
Gracious. Yeah. They don't have alignments in this game, huh? He'd be like chaotic evil or some shit.
He got worse and worse. But for due cause, like he lost a lot of friends and stuff. So
I sure did.
For every psychotic killer, there's always a good story of how they got to be that way.
Oh, before we continue, do tell them about how the whole collection started. It's still the prime achievement.
He's with a bunch of newbies who are in a bar fight, and one of them whacks the guy so hard that knocks his eyeball out of his socket. And the guy is in a lot of pain, so he's down for a turn. And Cheri goes over, and I'm like, that guy's really not a threat. He's down for a turn. He goes, yeah, I know. So he goes over, and he rips the guy's eyeball the rest of the way out of the socket with his hand. And so he started a collection of eyeballs. The Alucard generally has a calling card of leaving people with no eyes. I gagged, all my players gagged. Yeah, it was good times. Yeah. So this is the psycho that is known as Alucard.
Is that who you are now?
No, Cheri is Leonidis.
Not nearly psychotic.
He's kind of he's a Spartan. He was on this as a Galaxy Gladiator show. He became a very famous celebrity. And a beetle wrangling competition. They have these giant beetles, and he was wrangling one, and he beat the show. And then there was robots, and he beat all the robots, which nobody had done. And he became this famous celebrity. He ended up finding an orphanage and saving the orphanage from a water planet that, when it was sinking, basically moved everybody to this castle called Winterfell, and basically that's where he is now. These people have all invited a bunch of people to come live at his castle and on his lands. He was a very benevolent dictator.
A benevolent dictator? I like it.
But people were coming to pay tribute to the landowners, but Cheri was letting them keep everything. But at the same time, he adopted this child, which was a very problem child. The child has kind of gone on a murdering spree.
This is the daughter of his former character?
Yes.
Yeah,
But it's current child, though.
Right.
It's current adopted daughter named Cheri, who started doing some weird stuff. She's tore apart of a lot of electric appliances lately. She killed another... Little Jimmy, which was one of his best friends. She pushed Jimmy out the window and killed Jimmy, and Leonidis has covered it up. He basically said it was an accident when he knew otherwise.
What, man? Hey, some of my old habits don't die, dude.
So he was put in this position where does he speak up for his own daughter? So he spoke up for his own daughter and helped her cover up the murder, and now his daughter's somewhat loyal to him. She's also been doing a lot of weird things.
Well, I've still got my junk attached, so
and he had
that's
a chance.
A bonus.
He had a chance to leave earlier with
Morgana.
Morgana is her name. Morgana was evacuated earlier.
I should have left.
She begged him to leave with him, and he said, "No, I'm not leaving my castle." Cheri unleashed a lion, has tore up his castle on the inside. Child Protective Services has shown up to tell him that he was in trouble because Alucard was coming to get the child. Alucard had already killed the whore that was Cheri's mother and burned the orphanage where she came down from. They put these AA guns on the roof to protect Winterfell. They brought in a robot army to protect the castle. And a few troops, and now the robot army has turned on the few troops and has slaughtered most of them. So now there's a bunch of robots, there's broken turret guns, there's a lion on the loose. The Child Protective Services are very interested on the living conditions of Cheri, and she was last seen going into the dungeon, which is where Leonidis has followed her down, trying to catch his child after. What did she did something else to you, didn't she? For some reason you were going to strangle her. I can't remember what it was.
Fuck, man, I don't even remember.
So that's the story. Okay, so we're back where we're at.
Did you invent all of this?
Yeah, it's collective storytelling as well. They bore you guys with the backstory?
No, it's good to know what's going on. Is there anything you could briefly summarize about the universe that we're operating in?
Oh, okay. Earth gets burned up. They figure out how to do gravity shielding. People are evacuating Earth because the sun's getting hotter. They head into space. Basically, the first few people go really slow into space. The next people go really a lot faster because they figure out how to use gravity shielding to shield ships from light. And so you have a gravity drive on a ship that lets you go faster than the speed of light because light doesn't hit your ship. So everybody races out into space. 3 core planets are where most people settle. Some people disappear into space, never to be seen again. Big, churches build ships. Nations build ships. There's armadas of ships that go out into space to colonize these planets. The main are around the 3 core planets, which they start using that gravity system to terraform planets. By turning the planets upside down, they can actually use the force of gravity to make atoms. They can turn energy into atoms, so they actually build atmospheres, they build topsoils, and some planets go from being super acidic to being habitable. These planets, they grow up real fast too because the population is growing so fast. A bunch of these planets all get together and they're starting to be out in the middle and they get developed. Now in all, there's 500 different planets that have been terraformed out in the world that have human life and settlements on them. But the ones in the frontiers are very Wild West. Some of them are jungle, some of them they're all different. Every planet's a little different. The core planets have maintained authority, and they've said that all these new planets are theirs. And so there was a war between the 3 planets, and then they were centralized. Then you had the middle planets, and some of them were centralized and some of them weren't. And then you had the frontier planets who said that, we're not going to pay taxes for stuff in the core planets and this and that. As well as there's forced resettlement. If somebody had unpopular public opinion, they'd force you onto a ship and send you out to some barren wasteland resettlement program. People out in the farther, they didn't want the core planets to be in control of them. There was a 50-year war between the separatist middle planets and the frontier planets against the Alliance, the core planets. The Alliance had all the money and all the manufacturing, and they won the war. So now the Alliance is now the central government. It's called the Federal Alliance of Planets. They now maintain that they have authority over every human being on any rock, spaceship, or floating in space. No matter where you are in the galaxy, as a human being, you are under their authority. A lot of people have different opinions about what the Alliance can do about that.
Motion, suck it!
Some people just they keep drifting off. As soon as the Alliance comes closer, they move out a little farther into space. Some people just live in ships and just make a living and just become modern day gypsies, and they just are traders or whatever else. They just stay out of the Alliance's way and constantly being pushed further and further out in space because they don't want anything to do with the Alliance. But now you guys have been conscripted for the Alliance, whether you liked it or not. They've all been handed a rifle, and they said there's a disturbance. Episode 3 is coming up next, but first I wanted to give a shout out here to MizCon. MizCon is Missoula's science fiction fantasy convention. If you've never been to a gaming convention, they have lots of panels and asking questions, meet famous artists, you get to see great artwork. Professionals talk about gaming, cartooning, craft, all things are nerdy. You have a video show like a film festival, cosplay and costume parade, science experts, writers, all-night gaming, and room parties, too, to just geek out for an entire weekend with a lot of other geeks. Chances are you're going to make some nerdy friends, just like me. It's Memorial Day weekend here in Missoula, Montana. Hey, you got a recommendation, an art, a book, maybe another podcast, a game, something you want to put here at the end of the show? Let us know. We have a little spot here at the end of each episode where you can give a shout out to a loved one or endorse or recommend a product. Email us for more information. Are you an artist too? Want to be featured on the show? We need some artwork of space stations, spaceships, robots. Maybe you have some fan art. We can even put that here in the back at this little spot we call Artist Corner. We are also looking for music, so if you have an intro music or something like that, that'd be good background music, or maybe you have just an awesome song in general you want featured that's an original, we'll put it right here for you. And then put your name on the screen for everybody to see. Maybe you'll be popular because of it. Maybe you'll just be a delusional guy like me who talks to his computer and thinks he's cool. Thanks for watching Firewinds of the Suns. Tune in for our next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications on YouTube. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Firewinds of the Suns.